The movie opens in 1957 in the Rocky Mountains of Colorado with a young girl named Hope Adler, dialing an unknown number which she saw carved in ice. As mysterious as it seems, an unknown receiver responds, but is unable to give the exact details due to poor signal, and hence the young Hope hangs up the call. The scene shifts to 1982, in Colorado, with a young Finney Blake sparring with one of his classmates who claims himself to be a bully. He beats him brutally, showing his physical strength in front of everyone. This reminds us of the incident that took place 4 years ago, where a young Finney was abducted by a notorious serial killer named the Grabber. Finney was among his many victims, but unlike the rest, he managed to fight back and kill his perpetrator. We are also told that the Grabber had to kill his own brother as he had come to know about his misdeeds. Back at present, a classmate of Gwen, named Ernesto, invites her for a movie date, and this brings a smile in her face, and she agrees. Back inside her school, Ernesto gives her the movie tickets and compliments her for having visions of ghosts. We also see that she is mocked and taunted by her classmates due to her visions, as they believe her to be a witch. That night, we see Finney, smoking all alone and having visions of the dead Grabber. This tells us that he still suffers from PTSD. Back inside the room, Gwen has visions in her dream about a group of boys near a campfire. One of the boys, named Felix, goes in the bushes to relieve himself, but is chased by the Grabber. He beats him violently, and post that, rips open his intestines, and we see his yellow jacket lying on the ice. Soon, Felix surfaces from a frozen lake and writes the letter W on ice. And with this, Gwen awakens. Almost immediately, she hears a phone ringing, but upon picking it up, no one answers. Just then, Finney wakes up and she tells him that she had a nightmare, but he brushes it off and asks her to go to sleep. Next day, while returning from work, Finney hears a nearby phone ring, but upon picking it up, he rudely responds that he cannot help, and without even hearing the caller's voice, puts the phone down. But to our shock, as the camera zooms in, we see that the phone was out of order. The scene shifts to some boys playing with snowballs, but suddenly one of them, named Cal, spots the Grabber and runs for his life. Unfortunately, the evil man catches up to him and chops off his hands and legs, using an axe, and post that, burns the remains of his body. A dead Cal resurfaces from under the frozen lake and writes the letter B, and we understand that this again was one of Gwen's dream. Next, a disoriented Gwen opens her door only to find the bloody remains of Cal lying on the ground. She soon hears a mysterious voice and goes to visit the Grabber's house. There in the basement, she hears a phone ring and upon picking it up, hears her mother's voice. Here we realize that she is calling from the past, and a young Hope Adler tells her that she is calling from Camp Alpine Lake. But before she could say more, the call disconnects due to bad signal. To our horror, as soon as the call ends, we see the Grabber's dead brother, standing beside her with an axe plunged deep in his skull. But luckily, Finney arrives and snaps her out of her dream. Seeing herself in such a disoriented state, she breaks down, thinking that she has lost her mind, and being a loving brother, Finney calmly takes his sister away from that place. Next morning, she hands him the pamphlets of Camp Alpine Lake. She informs him that last night their mother had called on the mysterious phone and she was speaking from Alpine Lake. An adamant Finney is not willing to believe his sister until their father, Terrence Blake, arrives at the table and is shocked to see the pamphlets of that youth camp. He informs his children that their mother used to be a member of that camp, and this revelation takes Finney by shock. It establishes the fact that there is some kind of connection between the Grabber and the Alpine Lake camp. Hence, Finney and Gwen board Ernesto's car and begin their journey to Camp Alpine. But the blizzard was so strong that the brave Finney had to run in front of the car and show them the way in the darkness. Luckily, a girl named Mustang appears while riding a horse, and she shows them the way to Camp Alpine. While entering the camp, Finney spots the mysterious phone which Hope had used to call the previous night. They settle down, and Finney, as usual, starts smoking to relax himself. Back inside the room, Gwen enters another vision in her dream, where she sees herself standing on the frozen lake and a dead Spike, writing the letter H. This vision wakes her up, and Finney, on the other hand, hears the phone ringing. To our shock, the Grabber responds from the other end, and Finney is bamboozled to hear the voice of his nemesis again. The Grabber tells him that hell is not made up of fire, but instead consists only of ice. Finney retorts that he is not afraid anymore as he has killed the Grabber, but the evil entity responds that death is just a word. Gwen, on the other hand, sees Felix and Cal inside her room, and this freaks her out. A burnt Cal touches her hand, burning her skin and forcing her to scream in agony. Soon, Spike also appears, and the ghost of the grabber slices his head with a window pane. Gwen gives off an even louder scream, and hearing this, Finney rushes to her aid and snaps her out of her nightmare. Gwen breaks down after being tormented by the spirits of the dead children and finds comfort in Ernesto's company. Next morning, she reveals to Ernesto about Finney receiving calls from the grabber, and just then, the camp owner, Mando, invites them for breakfast. Gwen initiates small talk and inquires if he knew about her mother, Hope Adler, and upon seeing her picture, Mando recognizes her immediately. He adds that she was so full of life that he gave her the nickname, Starlight, and expresses his condolences after learning that she took her own life. Post-breakfast, Finney asks about the payphone outside the camp, but to our shock, Mando replies that it has been out of order for years. Mando departs, but almost immediately, the phone rings again, and this time, Finney hears the voice of a kid on the other end of the line. The boy says that he and 2 other kids are trapped and request his help to get free. Out of the blue, 3 kids surround Finney and they plead to him to find their bodies and free them. Post this, they disappear, and a confused Finney returns to the camp. That night, Gwen gets another vision, in which she sees her mother using the payphone and talking with another kid who was the victim of the grabber. Soon, she sees Felix, who runs off inside the forest. A curious Gwen follows him, only to find his bloody jacket and an axe plunged on a tree trunk, which oozes out blood. This wakes her up, and to her shock, she sees Cal waiting outside her room. He leads her inside another cabin, and Gwen quietly follows him inside. Finney, on the other hand, hears the phone ring and asks Ernesto to look after Gwen while he goes to answer it. Ernesto goes to her room, but to his consternation, finds the room empty. The grabber says hello, and an angry Finney tells him that he is not afraid of him anymore. The grabber tells him that this time he will hurt Finney by killing his sister, the one person whom he loves the most. And he wants Finney to witness his sister's death with his own eyes. Gwen enters the kitchen and sees the spirit of the grabber approaching her with an axe. He attacks her with it and tries to choke her to death. Meanwhile, Ernesto calls for help from the rest of the camp members, and together they locate Gwen inside the kitchen, being beaten by an invisible entity. It makes her spin in the air and smashes her to the walls. Ernesto tries to hold on to her, and Mustang also tries her best to help. Her screams alert Finney, and he arrives just in time to save his little sister. Seeing himself surrounded, the spirit of the grabber vanishes into the darkness, leaving a disoriented Gwen to her brother. Post this, the group discussed the recent happenings with Mando, and almost everyone apart from Finney is confused about what's going on. Here it is revealed that Mando bought this place after the mysterious killings of 3 boys, and since then he had left no stone unturned to search for their bodies so that he can give them a proper burial. When Gwen tells him about her visions, he believes that God has sent her to help him find the kids. She believes that the grabber gets his powers from the spirits of the kids, and hence they need to find the bodies so that their souls can rest in peace. This will leave the grabber powerless. In a shocking twist of events, it is revealed that the real name of the grabber is Wild Bill Hickok. In short, WBH. Mando is taken aback by this revelation and lets the group know that Bill was very good in ice skating and must have dumped the bodies in the frozen lake. At dawn, all the members, including Kenneth and Barbara, search for the bodies of the missing boys, but even after a prolonged search, manage to find nothing. That night, Finney visits his sister and tries to comfort her. A scared Gwen asks him what will happen if he is unable to protect her in her dreams. He responds, in that case, she needs to fight back, as it is her own dream. Soon, she falls asleep and immediately gets a new vision, in which she sees a young boy distributing papers, getting abducted by Wild Bill. But this time, we see Hope Adler also getting the same vision. This is how she comes to know that it is Wild Bill behind the kidnappings of the kids. Just to be sure, she visits his basement, and sure enough, finds the boy locked up. But before she can call the authorities, she too gets abducted by the grabber. He makes her unconscious and drags her inside his van. To our shock, he returns, only to invite Gwen, who witnessed all this happen in front of her eyes. Inside the van, the grabber comments that she looks just like her mother, and today he is going to show her how her mother died. He adds that hell is a place that takes away humanity, leaving only the evil parts behind, and he has become a bottomless pit of evil. Soon, they reach her home, and Gwen exits the vehicle, only to find how the grabber killed her mother by hanging her, making it look like an act of self-harm. As soon as Terrence sees the lifeless body of his beloved wife, he breaks down in tears and asks himself, "What wrong have I done?" leading us to believe that he blames himself for her death. Without delay, the grabber strikes her with his axe, making her bleed profusely in the real world. Ernesto and Finney put pressure on her hand to stop the bleeding, and fortunately enough, Felix appears, opening a door, helping her escape. This leads her back into the ice lake, where she sees Mando trying to break the ice sheet to continue his search. Just then, the payphone rings, and upon picking it up, Gwen hears the voice of the grabber. He tells her that he will kill anyone who tries to get in his path of vengeance. To our horror, we see the grabber behind Mando, breaking the ice with his axe, intending to drown him in the ice-cold water. Sure enough, the ice breaks and Mando gets pushed into the water by the evil spirit. Gwen watches helplessly from inside the phone booth. The grabber returns to her, breaking the glass with his axe and strangling her with the phone cord, making her bleed even more in the real world. Right then, she hears Finney's voice, pleading her to fight back. Encouraged by her brother, she hits him hard in the face, throwing him far away from her. She now believes that she too has powers in her dreams. With this, she comes back to her senses, and immediately the group goes to rescue a drowning Mando. A frozen Mando reveals that he has managed to find the body of Felix, giving the group a glimmer of hope. Just before dawn, Terrence arrives with the intention of bringing back both of his children. But Gwen reveals that they cannot leave until they find the missing boys and defeat the grabber. Terrence tries to force her to leave, but this is when an adamant Gwen reveals to him that it was the grabber who killed her mother, as she had discovered his true identity through her visions. To make her father believe in her words, she reveals that the first words that came out of his mouth after her death was, "What have I done?" This takes him by shock, and after all these years he realizes the truth behind his wife's death. Finney, too, is taken aback by this revelation and just cannot believe that the person who abducted him also killed his mother. Thus, the family decides to stay there and defeat their nemesis, once and for all. At dawn, the group resumes their search, and unfortunately, fail to find any traces of the rest of the children. Exhausted, Gwen falls asleep and enters another vision, where her astral projection sees the grabber menacingly approaching the group. He strikes Kenneth and Barbara with his axe, injuring them both. Understanding that she does not have much time, she dives into the lake and soon finds the missing bodies of the children inside barrels. She pushes them to the surface and is also helped by her father. The grabber then chokes Finney with his belt, making him gasp for air. A brave Finney does not give up and kicks him with all his strength. Terrence brings all the bodies to the shore and the grabber weakens. Seeing this, Gwen recites some verses from the Bible, prompting the grabber to come after her. But surprisingly, the hands of one of the dead boys grabs hold of his feet, making him lose balance. Soon, the spirits of the 3 dead boys appear in front of him, as if mocking him in this helpless state. She unmasks him, and we see his ugly face for the first time. Finney grabs him by the neck and slams his head multiple times into the ice, all the while reminding him that hell is made up of ice, and in hell he shall be buried. Post saying this, the siblings throw him into the ice-cold lake, and the spirits of the boys drag him to the bottom of the lake, as if dragging him to hell, where he remains frozen. With this, she leaves her astral form and wakes up in the real world, and hence, the nightmare ends. Next morning, Mando calls the parents of the dead children, letting them know that their remains have been found. But while departing, the payphone rings again, and this time, it is Gwen who hears it. She picks up the call, only to hear her mother's voice on the other end. Hope tells her that she is at peace and now stays in a beautiful place. Gwen is relieved to hear this, and she inquires if she will always bear the curse of having visions. To which, Hope responds that her visions are not a curse, but a blessing in disguise. Before ending the call, Hope tells Gwen how much she loves both of them and requests her to convey her feelings to Finney. With tears in her eyes, Gwen tells her brother about their mother's call, and the siblings hug each other in a warm embrace. Terrence soon accompanies them out of the camp, and this is how the story ends. If you like this recap, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Please also check out other videos in the channel.